the other thing is accountants, right? Accountants will know which properties are in trouble and which owners are potentially ready to sell. So talk to accountants, find the commercial real estate accountants in your area, strike up those conversations. And that's super easy to do because you go to them and you say, hey, look, I'm looking for an accountant for my properties. And they'll talk. I mean, believe me, they're going to want to talk with you. So it's an easy way to build those relationships.
Over the last year or so, you have heard Jonathan and I talk about the pain, frankly, the apocalypse that might be coming to multifamily property. We've talked about bridge debt. We've talked about bad assumptions. We've talked about rising cap rates, all of these things. But heck, something we really haven't talked about is how you can go find deals. Now, in this particular episode, we are going to focus on areas that I am looking at. 5 units to 40 units. We are not going to be looking at the 100 and 300, 5, none of that. We're not going to be looking at Class A. We're going to be looking at 5 to 40 Class B and C properties. The stuff that, frankly, is frozen. We've had no price discovery, but it is coming. It will happen. So we're going to talk about how you can go find these opportunities. Jonathan, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. I sense a little bit of a personal interest in this question, perhaps. You're looking for some guidance,
yes, a little bit, please. Yes, a little bit. Yeah, I think the opportunity that's coming in this particular space, no hyperbole, might be the best thing, might be the biggest opportunity in my investing career. And I took full advantage of the GFC. I think this might be bigger. We will likely add more units in the next 2.5 years, probably than we own today, if this goes the way I think it is.
Yeah, and I think there's a reasonable chance it will, and the reason for that being that in the GFC, multifamily did not attract a lot of investor. It always has investor interest. It didn't attract retail investor interest.
Correct.
Right. There. First of all, there really wasn't any way for most retail investors to invest in multifamily, but it also just wasn't on people's radar. People thought it was complicated. People thought it was too much work. People thought whatever. They wanted to do single family houses, and that's where all of the buzz was anyway, right? So people didn't want to be the landlords and whatever, right? But this time around, it attracted so much attention that prices really got outrageous, and I think now you'll see the reverse. All that will just go into reverse. So what's the question you have? Is that how do you find them? What do you, how do you find them? What's the first question you have?
I think it's multifold, right? Because I think when you are a mom and pop investor like myself, you're used to going to the MLS, right? Realtor.com, Redfin, because again, we're used to looking for houses. 5 to 40 units aren't houses. So I think the answer is, or the question really is, how do I do my homework? How do I go find motivated sellers? How do I find stress? How do I research? Who do I need to know? Kind of give us that guidance.
Well, so the first thing I'm going to say is don't discount the MLS or Trulia, all those other sites like that, Zillow, because especially in smaller markets, you will see a certain amount of multifamily hitting those sites because people, typical mom and pop owner, particularly if they own smaller property, if they're in that sort of 5 to maybe even 20 unit space, they're just going to go to the broker that they know. And very likely the broker that they know is a residential broker, and that residential broker doesn't know what else to do other than stick it on the MLS the way they would do with a house. So if you see that, jump on that. That is opportunity, because that means that asset is not being marketed to the right audience, right? So that is an opportunity for you. So don't discount that. Now, you won't find a lot of this on those sites, but you will find some. And actually, I've personally been looking for some smaller multifamilies myself, and I've been finding a fair amount of stuff in markets that I'm interested in on Trulia. And this is kind of like, this is like your 4, 5, 6 unit type stuff, not the bigger stuff. But every once in a while, something pops up that is 12, 15 units. And if you do see that, call that broker as soon as you can, because that is a broker who doesn't know how to market a commercial property and to whom.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I'm glad you started there, because again, Olivia and I's entire investing career has always been MLS based. And We've bought multiple 18 unit properties, 120 unit property, 13s, 10s, 8s, 7s, 5s. I think that's everything. All out of the MLS. And to your point, these were all with agents who's like, this was always their one oddball listing, right? They've never listed a 10 unit building. They're not sure of the vocabulary. They don't know this. They don't know that. Some were wildly overpriced, but some were wildly underpriced.
And that's makes sense to me, right? Because they don't really know how these things are valued. And I think what you're going to see every time I've ever dealt with a commercial property that's been listed by a residential broker, it's been mispriced. Because what they tend to do is use comps, and they'll do something crazy like, hey, houses in this neighborhood are selling for $100,000 each. This is 12 units, therefore the price is 1.2 million, right? And that's not how multifamily is priced. And maybe that price is a great price because of the cash flow, and maybe it's a crazy, ridiculous price because of the cash flow. So you have to understand how to value the properties. But I agree. Just residential brokers don't know.
Yeah, the other thing I would recommend, folks, I want to see what you think of this, is in my experience, there's thousands of residential brokers in any one market. And there's probably hundreds in anybody's buy box, my vocabulary. But when you look at commercial real estate, at least this was true the last time I went shopping. In the city like Fresno, California, or a county like Fresno, California, that's 1 million people, there are probably 5 to maybe 10 brokers who control 70% of the listings. So one of the things I would recommend folks to do is go to LoopNet, go to Crexi, go to these kind of dominant commercials, and just find out who the dominant players are.
Yep.
And then go try to meet them. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was actually going to be my next suggestion, right? So LoopNet and Crexi are increasingly good places to look for multifamily, especially if it's small. It used to be the case that people would say, LoopNet is where deals go to die, but that's still true to some extent. But I think that increasingly it is these are places where people are looking for deals, and that means that brokers who have like these smaller assets, or kind of like oddball assets, or things that they're not necessarily bringing to their big commercial buyers, but even sometimes those deals too, they're putting them onto LoopNet and to Crexi. And if you are using something like Crexi Pro, also there's a lot of data in Crexi Pro. There are comps, there are population, there's ownership records, there's all kinds of stuff in there that you can access if you sign up for Crexi Pro. Now I have to say it's a little bit clunky as a site, and I have had multiple demos by the people who run it, and every time they do a demo, I'm like, oh, this is amazing, and then I can't recreate what they did. So that's a problem. But there's a lot of potential in there, and I find Crexi in particular to be a good source for deals. But so here's the thing about Crexi too: if you are, especially in a market like this, which is pretty slow, I have brokers actually reaching out to me after I click on their Crexi listing, right? Nice. Okay. So if you sign up but this only happens if you sign up for Crexi Pro, because then you enter your own information in there, and they can contact you and they'll see that you're looking. But as you said, Michael, the way to, you can find out who the players are by getting onto Crexi and LoopNet and just perusing the listings, and then you'll find them, and then contact those people and start talking about what you're looking for. And the same way you do it with residential, define your buy box and just work the system that way.
Daily execution. The other thing that I find really interesting that I did not have in 2010 to call it 13 when I was actively shopping was technology to really understand the owner's position. I don't know if this is in Crexi Pro or not. I don't use that, but there is a technology today called PropStream. PropStream is a technology that a lot of residential flippers and wholesalers use. I use it all the time. They gave me an account, but PropStream now actually has data on lending or loan amounts for small multifamily. Now you can't filter it, so it's just 5 and above. You can't say like 5 to 40. So it's kind of everything. But I find that very interesting because it helps me architect my offer, right? If I find a 8-unit building and, it's owned free and clear, my offer is going to be written, probably heavily towards seller financing, probably higher price, but seller financing. If I find somebody who bought a 16-unit building in 2022 with, a variable rate loan or bridge debt, and their current list price is the same price they paid, I'm like, oh, this is something to watch. Because again, that's what I saw in the last crash was, if you were a seller in trouble, you always listed it at what you paid for it, hoping some idiot with 1031 money would come in, and you're a foreclosure waiting to happen, right? So I like the fact that PropStream now has data that I didn't have in 2010.
Yeah, that sounds super helpful. So thanks for letting me know about that.
Yeah. PropStream. Again, I have a link. You can get a discount, 50 free listings or whatever. I'll put it in the show notes to this. But again, any data that you can capture about the seller and about the loan and about the equity is good information. Because it'll help you architect it. Because if you're going to write a seller finance offer on something with 80% LTV, they can't say yes. It's just impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like that.
Yeah. Then the next place I would go, when you and I have talked about this many times before, is start talking to the banks and start with like your banker, right? Someone you have a relationship with already, and just tell them what you're looking for, and start figure out who the REO officer is at the bank, or even, people who may know that before it even gets to REO, if there's somebody who would know that these assets are in trouble, and maybe they're on a watch list already, right? So those are going to be really great sources for deals. And if you have a good relationship with the bank already, they're going to be favorably disposed to you taking over this property, especially if you can come in and buy, before the foreclosure process happens.
So help us understand that conversation. So let's say you're at a community bank, you have your checking, your savings account there. You're going to ask for the commercial lender, or the bad debt, or whatever that loan department's called. But how should you position it? Should you come in with kind of like a resume, like, hey, here's who I am, this is what I own, this is what I know? How do you kind of facilitate going to near the top of the list versus some schmuck that wastes their time?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think you need that for the person that you have a relationship with, but certainly for whoever they introduce you to, you should have, I mean, listen, put it this way. If you don't have this, is it the end of the story? No, but it's the better. Like when I was a lawyer, we always just talk about like putting your best foot forward, right? Like, like you want to anticipate all the questions that they're going to have before they're asked. And the more prepared you are, the better it's going to look. So now, unlike say a residential loan, which is going to be based on, your income and the value of the property as appraised, commercial loans are a little bit different. Now your credit and your income, I mean, these things will be important, but they are actually secondarily important. The most important things are, well, since you don't know what property you're buying yet, you can't talk about the cash flow, but your net worth is what they care about, right? So these loans are going to be, especially for smaller properties, very likely full recourse. So you're going to, they're going to be looking to your assets, right? If you can't, if you default. So you need to show up with a personal financial statement. Okay. So that's the first thing they're going to ask for. So you might as well just have it ready. Yeah. So put together like a little dossier of, like you said, like your resume, your current holdings, your experience in real estate, and then your personal financial statement. And then obviously if you have income statements or tax returns or whatever else, they will eventually ask for that. So you might as well have all that stuff ready to go. And if you show up prepared with that kind of stuff, you're going to instantly be taken seriously, rather than someone who's just like, oh, hey, I'm interested in buying multifamily. Yeah. What have you got? Right. So that kind of person won't be taken very seriously. There was one other thing I was going to add to this. So personal statement, personal financial statement, resume. Gosh, okay, I forget what it was.
Yeah, the other thing I would tell someone to bring, again, just to use the vernacular of the channel, is bring them your buy box, right?
Yeah.
All things aren't equal.
This is what I wanted to say. So yeah, bring them your buy box, but also it's, your net worth will constrain the size of the deal you can do, right? But I think it's also, let's say you've never owned a multifamily before, right? Don't go in there and tell them, hey, I want to look at your 50 units properties that you have, on a watch list. Don't make the leap so big, right? If you're doing the transition from residential to commercial, make it a believable leap, right? Yep. Make it something plausible. So go and say, hey, look, I've sat down and figured out my net worth. I've figured out, everything I need to figure out. And I'm looking to, and I own 20 units, 20 single family homes right now. I would like my next purchase to be a 10 unit multifamily property.
Love
right.
That.
And that is something that when you go in with that kind of attitude and you have all the documentation up front, they're going to look at you as somebody who's serious, but also ready to make that leap. Right. But if you're going in there and say, hey, I own one single family home and I want to now buy 20 units, it's going to be a bigger stretch, or you're going to have a big net worth or, something to overcome their skepticism that you know what you're doing. So,
yeah. So then the kind of the next thing is I'm trying to put my game plan together is, doing all of that, of course, right? The resume, the PFS, personal financial statement, all of that, looking at the banks I already have relationships with, right? I bought buildings last time directly from banks, so I'll start there. But the next thing I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start identifying, these target properties. Then I'm going to go to PropStream to research them. Then I'm going to find the lender, because that data is there. And I'm going to try to reach out to the lender and have a conversation about a specific property.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Lender, I see property 123 Main Street. It's listed at X. I mean, I'm going to go with an educated conversation. And I'm also going to probably lead with, oh, by the way, it's not worth 1.3. It's only worth 800. Let me know when you're ready to entertain that conversation or whatnot. What do you think about specific?
Yeah, I think going in with a specific property in mind is probably an easier way to start that conversation, because it's just much more concrete, right? And I think that will naturally lead itself to, well, hey, that one, not really moving on just yet, but we happen to have this other property that is about to be foreclosed on or whatever, or we just foreclosed on it, so, and especially if you come in there with all that other documentation prepared already that shows that you were in a position to move. I mean, especially the other thing too, I mentioned, didn't mention, like having the down payment, like in the bank, right? Like if you're assuming that they're going to finance it, and these commercial properties also, remember, they're usually financed at like 65% LTV. So, which is, for these smaller community banks and stuff, that's where they're going in. So if you go in there and you can show them, hey, I've got the 35% liquid, and you tell them very clearly, like, this is my net worth. This is the amount, this is the loan I can support based on my net worth. This is the size property I'm shooting for. I've got the 35% plus closing costs in the bank, sitting in cash waiting to be deployed. Like, those are the kind of things they're going to look at and say, okay, this is a person who is not just serious, but also ready to close. We're not going to waste our time with them.
Yeah. I just want the people that follow this channel to stand out, right? So how do you stand out? If you already have banking relationships, use those to practice, right? All of that, it makes total sense. But if you're going to call on a bank, a community bank, small branch, because you've done the research, hey, I found a 12-unit building. It's by XYZ credit union. Call in to them with that specific address, property, with details, data, price points, because you're going to be shocked. You're going to stand out. I guarantee you they're getting probably dozens of calls a month, and it's only going to increase from here, from all these wannabe investors. Don't be a wannabe investor. Do the work. Do some homework up front. My last question I had for you, Jonathan, was how often should I follow up? Right? How often should I?
Yeah, I would say once a month or so.
Okay, so
Just
once a month.
yeah, like just enough that you're on their radar, and if you get their email address, you can email them, whatever it is, just so that you kind of say, hey, I'm just checking back in. Is anything changed? Anything new that I want to talk about? That kind of thing. I do also want to point out that, very often, so let's just say you have identified a property that you're interested in, whether you found the loan information or not. If you actually go to the property physically, sometimes they'll have a sign that says who manages, right?
Yeah.
Like right there, often in the vestibule, because when tenants have questions, like it may be right there with the phone number. So you can call those people up too. And that is a way to potentially, striking up a relationship with those building managers is just another good
good idea. Great idea
for potential deals. The managers will know which properties are in trouble, right? Even as soon as the banks do, right?
Yeah, they'll be bitching about the owners. Oh, they're not fixing anything. Everything's a band-aid. Everything's delay. It's just the more data, the better. I haven't done that.
Yeah. So go. And then the other thing that's important about that is that, when you talk about going into the banks, right? If you already can say to them, hey, look, I already have a relationship with this management company there who's going to, make sure that they're good, make sure that, they're not someone who the bank is going to go, oh, like, no way, we're not.
Yeah, we're getting rid of them.
Yeah. So, but that, the more managers that you can meet, the better. And then, the other thing is accountants, right? Accountants will know which properties are in trouble and which owners are potentially ready to sell. So talk to accountants, find the commercial real estate accountants in your area, strike up those conversations. And that's super easy to do because you go to them and you say, hey, look, I'm looking for an accountant for my properties. And they'll talk. Believe me, they're going to want to talk with you. So it's an easy way to build those relationships.
So let's kind of paint, this is the timeline that I see. Cause again, I see this kind of like a tsunami. I don't know a better term, but it's just building now as we're in 25. I think it gets bigger, I guess is the way to say it, the longer it goes. And then maybe it crests in 26, but you got to do the work now. You got to make the relationships now because you want to be one of those 3 people that get a phone call or an email when something breaks.
Yeah.
You got to do it now.
I agree. And it's funny. Like I always, I think I've mentioned to you before, like I have a monthly call with a bunch of big syndicators. We've been doing this since 2016. And, on our last call just before Christmas, we were talking about the fact that we really think that the market is really not going to change that much this year. Like this 2025 is not going to be the year when it suddenly breaks free. And people have been talking for years, the last couple of years about survive till 25, right? Now I want to plant a stake in the ground as the first one who uses this phrase of survive 25. I think people have to survive 25.
Yes.
Right.
Agreed.
Not survive
through 25.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So,
I agree.
But now if you're on the buy side of this, though, like Michael said, this is the time to be planting those seeds because this is not, unless you're extremely lucky, this is not the kind of thing where you're going to call the bank and then you go, oh yeah, by the way, Mr. So-and-so that I don't even know, here's a property. Like you got to put in the time to build the relationships and then be in the right place at the right time when those deals start coming available.
Folks, 2025 is going to be the year to plant the seeds, do the work, skill up, practice, get better, do some research. I know that I'll be using PropStream, for example, which is a tool I didn't have last time because I can figure out mortgage data when it was originated, equity position. It just makes offers better. I love the idea of going to buildings physically and getting the property manager. I've never done that, so I'll have my team do that in Fresno. I think that's genius. And also following up monthly. It's a great cadence. It's not too obtrusive. I also like going with a package, right? PFS, history, having your tax returns ready if necessary. I just want people to realize that the work done in 25 is going to pay off in 26. And the more work you do now, it's the bigger opportunity in 26. Jonathan?
Yeah, absolutely. And just on that one note on that package too, that you bring to the banks, like I would do 2 things with that. One, I would put it all into like a Google Drive folder so you can just give somebody a link. But I also think there's something about just physically bringing it with you that makes an impression, right? And that just, it's like,
Agreed.
It kind of shows like here's a stack of paper of all the stuff you need that you're
Yeah.
gonna have to print off anyway. Like, here it is for you. And even if they're gonna go print it off again later, like just the fact that it just shows. I mean, and go bind it, like do it.
Yeah,
Make
do it right.
professional. Put a cover on it, like put your logo on it if you've got one. Like the more professional you make it look, the more seriously it'll be taken. And it's so easy to do that now. There's no excuse not to have it look professional, and just go and like go to
Kinko's or
Kinko's. I was going to say, does Kinko's even exist? But yeah, like go
somewhere
to
like that.
somewhere, right? Go to Staples, just have them bind it, and you'll look golden.
Jonathan, you're amazing. You have a school community, AIC, that does all this stuff and more. Is
Absolutely.
that right?
Yes. I mean, you could literally ask me these questions anytime you want if you join my school group. As I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm about to change this pretty dramatically and make it a lot more high touch, a lot more high price, but you can get in now, still get all the benefits of the future like price increases without paying the price increase. So if you go to AIC now, you can grandfather in the old price forever.
There you go, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
You too.
Thanks.